Namaskar, everybody, and welcome to the satsang, to the Gita satsang. Let's get started. Prarthana. By the Guru's grace and the will of Sri Krishna, we have all assembled for this Gita satsang. May we have their guidance to be able to learn and adopt the things which will help us to grow spiritually. Let's chant the shlokas. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardhanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Krishnaya Vasudevaya Haraye Paramatmane Pranatah Kleshanashaya Govindaya Namo Namaha Namostu te Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pullara-vindayatapatra-netra Yena tvaya bharatatailapurnaha Prajvalito jnanamaya-pradipaha Ramanujadaya patram jnana-vairagya-bhushanam Srimad-venkatanathāryam vande Vedanta-deshikam Yo nityamachyuta-padambujayukma-rukma Vyamohatastaditarani trinaya mene अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणं प्रपद्ये. So with prayers at the lotus feet of the Acharyas, let us start our topic for today. So we have been seeing the 4th chapter. Last satsang we stopped with the 20th shloka. Today we will continue with shloka number 21. Now the next 3 shloka number 21, 22 and 23, these 3 are connected in the sense that in all these 3 shlokas together, Krishna explains. Now already we saw in the last satsang how Krishna had told about the person, how certain kind of people, although they do karma, that whatever account gets created, whatever papa punya gets created, they don't get attached to those things. That papa punya does not come. They do not accrue any papa or punya with their actions. When they perform with the bhava that I am doing this for the Lord's pleasure and the Lord is getting it done through me, and when they do that karma along with jnana. So in these next 3 shlokas, what are the characteristics of such person? How you can make out that whether somebody is belonging to this category. That is what Krishna is going to explain to Arjuna. So in the 21st shloka, he says, Nirashiryata chittatma tyakta sarva parigraha shariram kevalam karma kurvannapnoti kilbisham. So free from expectations and the sense of ownership, with the mind and intellect fully controlled, they incur no sin even though performing actions by their body. So here Krishna is explaining that which kind of a person does not get papa. So there are 3 characteristics that he is telling here. First thing is the person is nirashi. Asha is some kind of a desire. Asha is having some particular expectation of an outcome. So somebody who is nirashi, somebody who does not have any expectation of an outcome. So here what do we mean by outcome or phala or desire for the phala? Superior and inferior phalas. We have already seen in previous satsangs that doing something with the intention, with the desire that you want to progress spiritually because of that. Doing something with the intention that you want to attain moksha. Doing something with the intention that you want Krishna to feel happy about that. That is the superior phala. And that is very much acceptable. Anything other than that is categorized as a low level phala, expectation of a desire which is inferior. So somebody who has no desire for any kind of inferior phala, such a person is called as nirashi. He does not have any low level desires. Second category, second characteristic that Krishna is talking about is yatha chittatma. Somebody who is having complete control over the mind, over the intellect. Such a person who has achieved the stage of mind and intellect control. Third, tyakta sarva parigraha. one who has given up all sense of ownership, somebody who has no feeling that I am doing this feeling of ahankara, that I am the one who is doing it, the feeling that this body and the atma are the same, that is also ahankara. So somebody who has given up this sense and does not feel that what he does is done by him, what he does belongs to him, such a kind of person. So somebody who has these three characteristics, when they do any kind of action, there is no papa which attaches to them. Now, people like this, with this kind of a mental frame, people who have achieved these particular stages, whatever they are doing, they will always be doing in such a way that they do the very minimum which is required just to sustain their body, just for the upkeep of their body. Because they are living in this world, because they have to live this life and they have to do all their actions and perform their duties as per their role in life, they do those things. But they are not attached to any of it. They have no desire for any phala out of that. They are completely controlled in mind and intellect when they are doing these actions, and they do all those actions without a sense of ownership of the action. So such a person has no ahankara and mamakara. Ahankara is that I am doing this, mamakara is that this belongs to me. So without this feeling, when they do, and they don't have kartritva, the sense of doership, that I am doing it, when a person does actions in this manner, they do not incur any kind of sin. This is what is told in the 21st shloka. Now, in the 22nd shloka, further more characteristics which make it even more clear, and which kind of, they actually give us the goals, that how should be our mindset. In the 22nd and 23rd shloka, Krishna is telling. So, in the 22nd shloka, he says, Yadrichala basantushto dvandva tito vimatsaraha samah siddha vasiddhau cha kritvapi na nibadhyate. Somebody who is santushta, who is content with whatever gain comes of its own accord, whatever labha he is getting by itself, by virtue of having done a particular action, whatever comes, he is content with that. He is free from envy. He does not have matsara. And he is beyond the dualities of life, dvandva. We will explain later. So he is beyond those dvandvas. Such a person is equipoised, means he is situated in a situation, he is situated in such a state that he sees equally success and failure. Such kind of people don't get bound by their actions even while they are performing all kinds of activities. So, what is Krishna telling here? Now, why is Krishna explaining this further at this level? So, here the Acharyas say that it appears as if Arjuna has certain questions in his mind. They are not spoken out by Arjuna, but realizing that Arjuna must be having these thoughts and that he may be wondering about these things, Krishna has answered this in this shloka. So, what may be these questions in Arjuna's mind? Now, Arjuna has been saying that I don't want to fight. Krishna has been insisting that no, Arjuna, you have to fight. It is your dharma, it is your karma as a kshatriya, it is your duty to fight. So, maybe Arjuna is wondering that if I do this dharma, if I do this karma of performing participating in this battle, of killing all these people, where is it going to take me? When I do action like this, which results in killing other people, will it not cause me papa? Will I not get attached with papa? Okay. Now, when I am doing this, I want what Arjuna told at one point of time, that I will go away to the forest. I will take sannyasa. I will spend all my time in contemplation of the Atma, in doing dhyana. So now Arjuna is thinking that if I do all this, I will get diverted away from that path of Atma Sakshatkara, because there will be obstacles definitely. When I'm doing this thing of fighting in the battle, there will be things which happen which upset me. I may get angry with somebody, I may be hurt by something else, I may feel bad about certain things. Now when I do all this and my mind goes away in all these emotions, then it will divert me from the pursuit of Atma Sakshatkara. So is it correct for me to do this? Now when I'm doing this, at some point of time, somebody who is my enemy, I will kill that person. Then I will feel sukha, I will feel happy, and I will feel a sense of jaya, I will have victory. At the same time, if somebody on my side dies, I will have sorrow, I will have dukkha, and I will feel that I have been defeated. So there is parajaya. So, how do I deal with all this, these dvandvas, the dualities which are there? And when I perform this action, will I not feel that I am the one who is doing this action? And when I do it thinking that I am killing all these people, then will I not be attached to that action? Am I not doing this for the phala of killing these people? Isn't it that an inferior phala? Like this, these are all the thoughts and doubts which may be arising in the mind of Arjuna. So Krishna is explaining that if a person performs actions with all these four things, then he does not get bound up by any of his actions. He does not get bound up means he is doing the action, but the fruit of that action, the papa or the punya which comes because of that action, does not attach itself to him. So he is trying to teach Arjuna that try to cultivate this bhava, and with this attitude, you perform your duty. What are these four qualities? A person who is satisfied with whatever gain he gets. Already, I think in the last satsang, we talked about it. We said that there is never any end to how much comfort we can seek, isn't it? So we must be doing our work. We must earn our livelihood. But how much it is, where do we draw the line? How much do I need? How much does a person need? Isn't it? That is something that everybody decides based on their mental makeup. For a person who does not want his actions to bind him, then for such a person, he will be doing whatever actions are enough to maintain a minimum level of comfort, a minimum level of necessity. He is actually not bothered about comfort, rather, he is only going to focus his attention on taking care of his necessities. So, if there is a person, whatever comes by itself on his way, he is doing his work, he is performing his duties, whatever gain comes, whatever labha he gets by itself, he will be satisfied with that. He is content with that much what he is getting. He does not make active efforts to go and get something more, to achieve something more in terms of materialistic progress or materialistic gain. Second quality of such a person is beyond all the dvandvas, beyond all the dualities. What are these dualities? The two opposite of extremes: heat, cold; joy, sorrow; gain, loss; victory, defeat. So many times in our life, we have situations where we are affected by all these. Nowadays, all of us, we are complaining that the weather of Bangalore has become very peculiar and it is totally unpredictable. So we feel affected by these changes, isn't it? So physically we feel, oh, it is so hot right now. Oh, it has suddenly become cold. It is raining and suddenly it will be shining. The sun will be out, hot and shining. So these dualities, if we are affected by all these, that means we are still not on this path of achieving, control over our senses and going ahead on the spiritual path. We get very much affected by all these things. Then something good happens in our life, we feel a lot of joy, we are in sukha. And something bad happens, we go down to the very depths, we feel sorrowful all the time. Then when something we get, right, we gain something, we have some profit or something, we get money, any kind of material possession, we feel very happy about that. We are in a state of having gain, we feel very happy about that. Or if something is taken away from us, then we feel the loss very strongly. Then many times we have our own petty battles with people around us, and if we proved our point, then we feel happy, we feel, yes, I have won this argument, and things like that. Or we feel sad that somebody else defeated us, or somebody put another point over us and we had to accept defeat in front of that person. So like this, these dualities, somebody who is beyond all these dualities, such a person does not get bound by any actions which he performs. Until we reach that level, whatever actions we are doing, we are going on getting bound up with that. That means that is going on generating papa and punya for us. The third quality, such a person is free from matsara. A person who does not have this quality of jealousy or matsarya. that kind of a person does not get bound up by the actions. So, if actually they tell many times that out of all the shadripu, the evil those doshas which are there, which are called as the enemies of the atma, kama, krodha, lobha, moha, madha, matsarya. So they say that out of all these, this jealousy is the one which is really the worst, because all the others, somehow what you can do is you can convert them in such a way that you use those qualities in worship of the Lord or in your adhyatmic sadhana. Like suppose somebody is filled with kama, lot of desire for other things. You can slowly change your focus and make your desire to be the desire for attaining God. Suppose you have this quality of krodha, that you're always getting angry. You can turn that in the opposite direction by getting angry with yourself that, oh, I am not doing as much sadhana as I want to do. Oh, I am not following whatever Krishna has told properly. Isn't it? So, like that, each of those Shadripus, all the five of them can be turned. But this jealousy, this matsara, this quality is something which you cannot in any way use it for developing in your adhyatmic sadhana. So that is why a lot of importance is given for getting oneself free from this, what you say, parasitic quality of jealousy. Because the minute we have jealousy, not the minute we have jealousy, all of us have jealousy all the time. The minute we get free from that jealousy, then our actual spiritual progress will start. So that is considered as a very important quality. If somebody is free from jealousy, then that person does not get bound up by karma. And a person who is equipoised, a person who is having a quality of not getting disturbed by failure or success. What happens to us? We are not disturbed by success. We feel happy when we succeed, but we are very much disturbed by failure. Sometimes in success we feel highly excited, and that also is a kind of a disturbance. So if somebody is able to stay the same, is able to stay unaffected, somebody has the quality of samatva, he is constantly balanced, whether there is failure or there is success, his approach, his outlook, his attitude remains the same. Such a person will also not get bound by any actions. So, what it is for us to see now, that all these qualities are told, right? How many of these qualities have I thought of at least trying to cultivate? This is what we should be thinking about. Where are we? Now, Krishna has given very clearly what qualities are required. So, where are we with respect to this? We need to introspect on this. So, Krishna is explaining what are these characteristics, how to not get bound by actions. If we are able to follow these things, if we make efforts to follow these things, see, it is not that we will achieve all this immediately. We may not achieve it after many years of sadhana also. But what is our sadhana? Trying to get there. Many times, like people ask that they say that they want to do meditation, for example. Now, everybody's complaint is always that, oh, I'm trying so much to meditate, but I'm not able to concentrate my mind. My mind keeps wandering. See, if you achieved concentration of mind, you would be a siddha. You would be a realized soul. Until you are not a realized soul, until you are just a normal jivatma caught up in this world and worldly things, you will not have concentration. That trying to make the effort to concentrate the mind, that is what is your sadhana. That is what is the effort that you are putting in. And putting that effort is what will take you ahead, isn't it? Similarly, all these qualities, we should know that these are the goals, these are the ideals, this is the state to which we have to get. Today, obviously, we are not at that state. We will not be for many years to come. We may not be by the time we finish this Janma also. Who knows? But we have to keep these as goalposts. We have to know that this is where I am going to reach. This is what I should cultivate. And with that in mind, when we keep doing our sadhana, every time we go through an event in our life, every time we have some kind of an experience, every day, all the activities in my life, if at the end of each day, I sit and assess before I go to sleep every night, if I sit and assess for myself, how much of these qualities did I show today? How much was I able to practice in my life today? then that means that we are genuinely putting efforts. And when we keep doing that, see, if we listen one day in the satsang and we forget all about it, it will not stay with us. But if we write it down somewhere and we keep it, and every day we do a mental assessment of our own performance against these criteria, then we will understand. It will constantly remain in our mind. And we will say, today, when I did this particular thing, what was my attitude? Was I able to stay calm although there was disturbance? When I did this, did I try to seek more comfort than what I should be seeking? Like this, we need to assess for ourselves. So, using this, we can assess how far, how well we are progressing in our sadhana. Now, in the next shloka, again here, Krishna is telling that such kind of people, how they are not attached, and because of that, whatever they do, all those actions are like a yajna. They are like a sacrifice to God. So, in this 23rd shloka, Krishna says, Gata sangasya muktasya jnanavastita chetasah yajnayacharatah karma samagram praviliyate. They are released from the bondage of material attachments and their intellect is established in divine knowledge. Since they perform all actions as a sacrifice to God, they are freed from all karmic reactions. When karma is done without attachment, the papas get destroyed. Now, it may not be possible for us to do karma without attachment to anything. Then, what we must do? We must do our karma with the bhava that I am doing it for the Lord. See, when we perform all actions as a sacrifice to God, this is a yajna, this is what I am offering to God. If I can have that bhava, then I will be freed from the karmic reaction. So, a person performs such actions, he is called as a mukta. How do we get to this state? By developing a jnana which is steeped in the Atma. That means constantly at all points of time, I need to keep reminding myself that I, what I am calling as I, is not this Sharira, it is the Atma. Whatever actions are being done by me, I am doing these for the pleasure of the Lord. Whatever I am doing, I don't want a particular outcome from it. I will do all actions because it is my duty to do it, offering those actions to the Lord. I will do all actions with the bhava that the Lord is getting it done through me. So, like this, if we can immerse our mind in the God, in thinking all the time about the Lord, then we will develop a higher taste. When we develop a higher taste, automatically the inferior tastes will start falling away. Now, many of us may have noticed that as we got older, the kind of food that we have interest in eating has changed. When we were younger, we may have wanted to eat a lot of spicy food. We would have wanted, a lot of interesting food. We would have wanted to try out different things, eat new dishes, maybe cook new things and all that. But as we have grown older, what has happened now? Now we are happy with our ordinary rasam and rice or anna musru, like that curd rice. Our tastes have changed. We no longer want things which are spicy, which are always tasty, and which are, exciting our taste buds. That desire has changed. Now, okay, there are quite a few people in this world, unfortunately, although they have aged physically, these tastes have not gone away. That is because the higher taste for the higher things in life have not come. So we are still stuck at the physical body level, right? Now, for us, if we have got beyond that stage, it may be also because of our physical health. Like I can no longer tolerate food which is spicy. I have no energy now. I'm too tired maybe to do all those things which require cooking a new dish, right? That can also be there. But we need to evaluate for ourselves. Is it only that, or is it just that I have learned to be content with the simple things in my life, right? So if that has happened, if we have learned to be contented with simple things, that means, and if we prefer to spend our time in spiritual activity, then it means that we are slowly developing a higher taste. And when we develop a higher taste, those inferior tastes will all fall away. Like here, the commentators give an example. If there is somebody who is a billionaire, right? Now, that billionaire is not bothered about what happens to a few thousand rupees. Why? Because he has so much money. When he has millions and billions and trillions and whatever, is he going to be bothered if somewhere here, there, few hundred rupees, few thousand rupees, something goes missing or something happens to it? He's not bothered about that because his goal is fixed on something much higher. Similarly, for us, if we are able to immerse our mind in God, if we get the taste for God, if we get the taste for satsanga, then we don't get bothered about the smaller things in our life, about what happens in this worldly existence. That stops troubling us so much. So, if we are able to retain this stage, that we focus our mind on God, even when we are doing our worldly activities, if any karma is performed in this state, then any effects which may come from the karma, those effects get destroyed. What do we mean by saying any effects which come from karma? If there is any papa which is going to come by any action, if there is any punya which is going to come from the action, then that papa and punya are not added into my account. But this is a very superior state. But how we can get there? By constantly keeping ourselves aware that yes, I am doing this action, so I am doing karma, but with jnana. What is the reason why I am doing this? I am not doing this for my pleasure, but for the Lord's pleasure. I am not doing this that I am doing it, but I am only doing it because God has given me the ability to do it. I am doing this so that it can be offered to Him. I am doing this that with the bhava that He is getting it done through me. Like this, when we try to constantly keep reminding ourselves and we get that stage, then no papa, no punya, nothing attaches to us. And in that stage, if we do our actions, then we go further ahead on the spiritual path. So these are the things. So now, what is the practical application for this? Now, let us say, for example, sometimes we take up some responsibility or we are given a task and we do that well, and still other people are finding fault with our work. Okay. So, if we are just normal people, what do we think? We say, oh, it's so unfair of them to say that. How can they say something like that? I did everything properly. I did so much hard work. And yet, how can they find fault with me? Why all the time they are finding fault with me? This attitude means that we are attached to the task which we did and we want them to praise us for that. Sometimes we say, okay, even if they don't praise, it's fine, but let them not say bad things at least. That means what? I am having some expectation of my own there, right? And I am not at the stage where I'm willing to take anything and everything. I am not equipoised, isn't it? So I'm affected. When they say good things, I feel happy. When they say bad things, I feel sad or I get angry, right? So that if I feel when somebody finds fault with me, if I feel, oh, this is unfair, this is not proper, then it means that I'm very much still attached to whatever I'm doing. But suppose we think when somebody says something to us and we are able to go to the mind stage where we say that I must have done some papa and that is why I'm getting this scolding. If I can have that attitude, then it shows that I don't have attachment. It shows that I have progressed in my journey. Many times, some places I've heard people telling also that, see, when we find somebody's unfairly, telling something wrong about us, I would have done a particular action. And they will say, no, no, you did it because of this, or you did it like this, and purposely you have done to make me feel bad. Or they accuse me of something which I have not done. They'll say, you are simply telling, or you didn't come on time. I have done everything properly, and still people are finding fault with me. And what they are telling is grossly untrue. Yet, what I should think, these great saints and all explained, what I should think that, okay, right now maybe I have not done. In this particular incident, I may not have done all that. So it may appear that it is unfair what they are accusing me of. But somewhere at some point of time, I would have done. Somewhere in this Janma, I would have done something like that. And that time, I would not have got those scoldings. So I am getting it now. Or forget this Janma. In some past Janma, definitely I would have done something like this. And that is what is coming back to me. So if we learn to think like this, then that is the path to get to a stage where we become unaffected, where we develop that sense of being equipoised. That is where we need to go to. Now, here I have put a picture of a person. This is one of the very famous disciples of Swami Ramanujacharya. His name is Kuratalvan. He was, in age, he was older to Ramanujacharya, but he was the Shishya of Swami Ramanuja. Now, you all know of the incidents that in Sri Rangam there was some trouble, and because of that, Swami Ramanujacharya had to come to Karnataka. He came, and the place where he went and stayed and did all those pujas and everything was Melkote. So, in Sri Rangam, there was this one king, and he was, like a fanatic, and he was out to prove that he wanted it to be declared that Shiva is superior to Vishnu. Right. So he was on a spree of getting all the Matadipatis of all the great spiritual leaders to sign one document saying that they agree that Shiva is superior to Vishnu. Now, this was totally, what you say, apachara. It was totally unacceptable for uh, Swami Ramanujacharya to accept, because all along his Guru Parampara has come and they have been saying that Sriman Narayana is the Supreme Lord. So, how will they accept that Shiva is superior and get under this, fanatic king and agree to what he's saying? So, it was decided. Then they came to know that the soldiers of the king are coming to catch hold to arrest Swami Ramanuja and take him to the king. Now, this Kuratalvan, he did not want his Acharya to go through all that. And he wanted that his Acharya should stay safe and continue to propagate the message of the Vishishtadvaita philosophy. So, what he did was, he made Swami Ramanuja. Swami Ramanuja was a sannyasi. This Kuratalvan was a grihastha. So, Swami used to always wear orange robes. And this grihastha was wearing white robes. What he did was, they were at the river bank at that time. They had just finished their bath when they got news that the soldiers are coming. So this Swami, this Kuratalvan, he begged Swami Ramanuja that please you wear my clothes, you wear my white dhoti, my white panche, and you go off with all these shishya. You go and take shelter somewhere. Go away from this place. I will wear your clothes and I will go in your name to the king. So this they did. So Swami Ramanuja traveled with all the other shishyas and all that, and after hiking through the forests and all that, they finally reached Melkote. This Kuratalvan and another of Ramanuja's gurus, called Periyanambi, they both waited there and the soldiers took them. They went to the court. There was lot of vivada and all that. And the king said, if you don't accept this, then I will have your eyes taken out as punishment. So this Kuratalvan said, who are you to take my eyes out? I will only take my eyes out. After having seen such a, horrible person like you and all this fanatic thing that you are doing, I don't want to have my eyesight. I will not let you take away my eyes. I will only take away my eyes. And with that quill, he poked his eyes and he pulled out his eyes. So he became blind. After some time, that king found that, okay, there is no point of getting this person. He's not going to agree, and anything Ramanuja has already gone away. So these people were released. Now, this Kuratalvan, he stayed like that blind. He was blinded for the rest of his life. After Swami Ramanuja, after many years, when that king's reign got over and everything came back to normal, then Ramanujacharya came back to Sri Rangam. At that time, now he had already got news of all these events. But when he came back and again, actually seeing Kuratalvan blind like that, he was moved to tears. Ramanuja felt so bad. He said, see, because of, for me, you have done such a great sacrifice. How bad it is. You had to lose your eyesight. You are such a great Shishya. And this Kuratalvan, no, he was actually a very wealthy man. He had given up all that wealth and everything and come, and he was living a very simple and humble life as the Shishya of Swami Ramanuja. So Ramanujacharya was really very upset and he said, oh God, how you have become blind like this? How could it be? You are such a great Shishya and this thing, and yet how this happened to you? He was crying like that. That time, you know what this Kuratalvan told? He said, Acharya, why are you feeling bad? I know what must have happened. I think someday, at some point of time, I would have looked at some Sri Vaishnava. Now, you know that the Sri Vaishnavas, they wear what is called as the Urdhva Pundra, isn't it? The tilak, what they wear on their forehead, the V-shaped or the Y-shaped white color, and the red or yellow line in the middle. So he said, so Kuratalvan said, I must have looked at some Sri Vaishnava wearing the Urdhva Pundra, and I must have thought in my mind that this chap has not worn that properly. It is donka. It is slightly tilted. It has not been worn properly. I must have seen with my eyes and done some apachara like that. I must have had some bad thought like that. That is why, as punishment, my eyes were taken away. Can we imagine the humility of this man? how great a person he is. That he is absolutely, this is what we were talking about, isn't it? That he has done absolutely no wrong. He has done everything correct. He has shown nishtha to his philosophy, to his siddhanta. He has served his guru. He has done such a great sacrifice for the sake of the guru. And never in his life he has ever hurt anybody or, caused any harm to anybody. But when his eyes go away, he's the acharya is saying it is so bad that you've lost your eyes. But this Kuratalwan is telling that I must have looked at some Sri Vaishnava and thought that his Urdhva Pundra is donka, it is crooked. And because of that bad thought which I had, that is why I have had to lose my eyesight. This is the meaning of being equipoised. This is the meaning of understanding that whether something good happens, bad happens, I'm going to be the same. This is the attitude of trying to say that even if when somebody finds fault with me, then yes, I deserve it in some way or the other. I must have done something to have attracted this. So that is the bhava that Kuratalvan had. We This story I told so that it is there up there, like an ideal, like a goal for us. We will not be able to achieve his level, definitely, but at least we can make the effort in that direction, knowing that these are the ideals our great Purushas have left down for us. Now we are totally out of time and this meeting is going to end anytime. So let us offer Kritagnyata. If anybody has any questions or anything to say, please send in the WhatsApp. We will answer that there. Okay. Let us offer Kritagnyata at the lotus feet of Sri Krishna and Guru for inspiring.